Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Today in Manufacturing podcast. With me this week are Jeff Ranke and Anna Wells. We each have more than 15 years of experience covering the manufacturing industry. Every week, we take the 5 most popular stories on our websites and discuss the implications they have on our industry going forward. Before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Anna at IEN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first, and subscribe to us on YouTube at IEN Magazine so you can get a notification whenever we go live every Thursday. Jeff, how you doing this week?
I'm good, David. Good to be back.
Yeah, it's good to have you back.
Thanks.
Everything went well?
Yeah, we're a week into the college moves and no complaints yet.
Nothing.
So
that's great.
So we're just going to stay positive.
I'm pretty sure it's smooth sailing then, you know.
What could possibly go wrong?
Nothing.
Yeah,
nothing.
We're good.
Well, Jeff, did you have a chance to check out last week's episode?
Yes.
Oh,
sorry.
He definitely, that was a kind of. Oh, well, anyway. Well, then you didn't
Very
hear this.
sheepish look on Jeff's face right now.
Well, and before I get into this sheepishness, Anna, how you doing?
Good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So remember when we were talking about the whole crazy amount of problems Boeing was having with the whole Starliner bit?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it turns out I got a number of things wrong. And what's interesting, Jeff, is that had you listened, some of the one thing that I said was that NASA used to mitigate risk down to zero, and we have a lot of really cool individuals that listen to this podcast, watch it, and some that even work directly on the Starliner program. And quote, that fact is absolutely not true. Got that one way wrong. Wrong.
But this is kind of a mathematics type thing here. I'm really surprised that you wouldn't be more familiar. And just kind of nailed that.
If we were no, this is not math. This is just straight false fact. So the listener who actually works on the Starliner program, he reached out, or actually I don't know if it was a he or she, reached out with some of this incredible insight. Like I said, this person says that the assumed risk of the entire shuttle program has always been 1 in 100, a 1 in 100 chance of catastrophic failure. Mm-hmm. And that's from the very beginning of the program. So to that effect, astronauts kind of always knew the stakes. When the commercial crew program started and NASA started looking for contractors, they said that your vehicle, so SpaceX, Boeing, all the other, would-be contractors, their vehicle had to be 3 times the safety factor of the shuttle. So Starliner's safety factor is 1 in 300. With these helium leaks and thruster issues that we were talking about, the safety factor was actually only down to 1 in 280. Still almost 2.8 times.
Yeah.
Because I got that right. More safe than your average shuttle program. They went on to ask if I wanted to guess the safety factor of SpaceX's Dragon. It's almost identical, according to the source. This person says that NASA is flying the astronauts home on SpaceX because, if they don't have to take the risk, why would they, in terms of bringing them home on a Starliner versus SpaceX, even though it is essentially an identical safety risk?
Yeah.
This source says that it isn't necessarily a nail in the coffin for Boeing's commercial crew program because of a number of reasons. NASA has always wanted to have 2 vehicles. Starliner also already has the contract. It has the vehicle, and it's already been to space twice, and it has come back just fine. So a lot of things on the line as Starliner is scheduled to undock from the ISS tomorrow evening, and it should be back around midnight. So, fingers crossed. I thought it was some incredible insight into the story too.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And, other than, I knew that it likely wasn't risk down to 0, but I didn't know it was 1 in 100 and that now it's 1 in 300.
Yeah.
Just that much safer. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Also, how do you factor that, Jeff?
Do I need to get out the chalkboard and go through the math?
No, I just mean like, I'm sure it's this grand equation, but like, oh no, it's 3 times safer because 3 times safer because of X. Like I'm just kind of curious as to what
I'm sure there's a lot of redundancies built in and things of that nature.
Yeah.
Test fails on materials, all that kind of stuff.
No, but I just wanted to thank this anonymous source for reaching out again because, again,
yeah, that's awesome.
Really cool insight into the program. And agreed, we all have our fingers crossed for tomorrow night as well. Doug's with us live. Welcome back, Jeff.
Thanks, Doug.
He got through the first part of last week, and then Ben put him to sleep. Oh, that's so mean!
Oh.
Producer Alex.
Ow.
Producer Alex, you've got to vet that stuff.
How is that on me?
That's on you. He puts it in the chat. You put it on the screen. Some things don't make it.
He's Ron Burgundy.
Oh, my goodness.
He'll read anything that's
Come
on the screen.
Alex. Oh, no. All right. Well.
Was that your dad's scolding voice that just kind of came out there?
A little bit.
Alex, we're very ashamed.
Come on.
We're very disappointed in you.
Come on. He did I guess he responded like my kid normally does. What? All right. Well, before we jump into our first story this week, we have a word from our sponsor. This week's episode is brought to you by MSI Data. Many field service organizations understand the technology they use in their day-to-day operations, but don't take the necessary steps to tap into its full potential. In your guide to field service maturity, you'll discover what field service maturity is, why it matters, and how to get started. So download your guide to field service maturity now. There is a link in the live chat and in the description. Check that out now and let us know what you think. GM is facing a class action lawsuit over defective transmissions. This summer, General Motors finally settled its years-long class action lawsuit in which plaintiffs alleged that its Duramax diesel engines contained faulty fuel pumps. The ink was barely dry on the deal when GM faced another lawsuit relating to an entirely different issue: transmissions. The lawsuit says GM knowingly sold defective transmissions between 2015 and 2019. Some 800,000 vehicles, including Cadillacs, Chevys, and GMCs, are implicated in the suit. Drivers say the vehicles lurch in lower gears and shake or shudder at higher gears, even after repair attempts were made. The claim also accuses GM of telling dealers to say the harsh shifting was normal. Now, Reuters says GM is fighting back, saying many of the class members had never actually experienced these transmission problems and therefore lacked the standing to sue. Well, a judge disagreed with GM's argument in 2023, and the latest decision from a federal appeals court says that simply, quote, overpaying for allegedly defective vehicles was enough to establish standing, and the case is going to be pursued. It's unknown what potential penalty GM might face, but the Duramax settlement included a $5,000 payment for each of the 11 plaintiffs, reimbursement for out-of-pocket repairs, and $15 million to be split among attorneys. Anna, do you think GM knew about this problem? Is it real, or is the company victim of just another predatory lawsuit?
Well, I think that based on the decision of 2 courts now, I think this is more than just a predatory suit. I think they would have thrown it out by now, at least on appeal, if this didn't have some merit. And it sounds like GM's goal was to deal with this through arbitration, and this panel in the appellate court said, no, sorry, you have to, face this. So, looking at what the attorneys for the class action suit are saying, we're talking about in this lawsuit, not just clunky operating, but what they're actually alleging to be unsafe. The suit says the transmission issues were resulting in so much shuddering and lurching that it was causing like slow acceleration. People were unable to like gradually accelerate because they were kind of bumping along, and it was causing unsafe merging, unsafe everything, right? Yeah. So one of the law firms behind this extrapolated on what they believe their evidence is that's pointing to GM's knowledge of this and therefore their negligence in this case. Among other things, plaintiffs in this class action say that GM not only knew about this issue, but developed a fix for it in 2018, namely a transmission flush it calls Mod 1A. However, they say GM made the business decision in 2019 to actually forego recalling these vehicles. They say it was approximately $2 million. I don't know. Right now, the suit is saying $800,000. But they say GM decided not to recall the vehicles to receive the flush because it would have cost the automaker about $300 per vehicle. So times $2 million.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah.
So instead, they decided to limit the flush to only unsold Cadillacs and trucks in certain states where it expected customers to complain within their warranty. These are the allegations in the suit. This is not me talking.
Right.
So finally, the plaintiffs complained that GM actually never alerted existing customers of this issue or the fix, and that they only addressed the issue if the customer was under warranty and complained, basically. So I'm sure GM is going to deny all this. But their tact so far, as I said, was more about not whether the suit had merit, but whether or not it should be allowed to proceed. They were saying if you didn't experience the problem, you shouldn't be included in this class action. But now that this is moving forward, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what kind of evidence these plaintiffs can produce, especially if this transmission flush Mod 1A truly does exist and it was been kind of kept quiet. I don't know.
Well, I guess like when it comes down to the math for them, it's really I feel like they're just playing with fire. They're gambling, right? Like they're hoping that they get the fix in without not too many people noticing it. And that, in the event that something like this comes to light, looking at the Duramax settlement, they paid a couple of grand to each of the plaintiffs. They paid a few $1 million to the attorneys. Maybe they made it out a little cheaper. I mean, if you're looking at a $600 million potential recall, maybe you think that, okay, worst comes to worst, it's going to cost us less than $500 million.
And maybe it won't impact some people. Is probably part of the reasoning there. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Jeff, have you ever been in a car when it's lurched?
Well, when I was driving a stick shift, and it was my fault. So, more operator error than mechanical. But
so for me, it was operator error too. When we were running out of oil, didn't know it, and the car just started like stopping and lurching. And it was just, something was clearly wrong.
Out of oil?
Yeah, bone dry.
How?
Long story short, I was borrowing a significant other's mother's car. And it was fantastic because the way it went down, I wound up getting stranded with a bunch of friends in the middle of a bad area of a town. And, the friend's father comes to the rescue, immediately just starts laying into his wife. Just like, I can't believe, though. So, that's a long story. But it's like, it is, when you talk about it being a dangerous situation, you're right, because you kind of lose control of your car in the moment. Yeah. And I was in a highway situation and it was scary. So I can understand how these drivers want some sort of fix for their vehicle.
Yeah. I kind of had to chuckle internally when they tried to make the argument that just because no claims were made, how could they prove something was wrong?
Right.
So you have to wait till something breaks.
Slippery.
Just a ridiculous thing. Plus, when they talk about that transmission fluid flushing service or whatever, I don't know. I'd be very suspect there. Traditionally, those are services done to clean out and replace fluids so things flow better. This seems a lot more mechanical to me when you're talking about a transmission basically causing a vehicle and engine to lurch. Yeah. Seems to me like that's more of a linkage issue or so. I don't know. Anyway, I would be suspect that a flush and fill could fix that.
Okay.
I don't know. Overall, though, when you look at this, I think where this would really create greater concerns for me if I'm General Motors is we're coming off a really good year. GM saw a huge uptick in sales, saw a gain in U.S. market share. It was a really good stretch for them. Now we get into 2024 and they're having a lot of issues here. And this is a huge one, especially when you look at the vehicles that this impacts. You're looking at the Suburban. You're looking at the Silverado. You're looking at potentially previous models of the Escalade. These are all big performers in key categories for GM. Now, even though it doesn't impact current model years, we're looking, was it 15 to 19 or 16 to 19, I think it was?
Yeah.
So it is a little bit legacy, but I think that feeds into maybe some people's apprehension when they're looking from a competitive advantage. which way do you go?
Yeah.
And then it also bleeds into a lot of issues that have risen in recent years about reliability for GM models. Looking at the consumer reports here, the best GM reliability rating comes with Buicks, and they're at number 12. Cadillac's at 16, Chevy's at 20, and GMC vehicles are at 24th in terms of reliability. So you put all of this stuff together, it really could be a momentum killer for GM and really put them at a huge competitive disadvantage both in the short and long term in those key product categories. When you look at people having to wonder, is the transmission going to work? I mean, the engine and the transmission shouldn't have to worry about those for, 150,000 miles.
Well, and we talk about emission scandals. We talk about testing cheating. We talk about sensor recalls, smaller stuff that it seems as if the Toyotas, other ones that have seen big recalls have kind of not been immune from, but really you haven't seen it impact consumer choice. But when you're talking about your car lurching and stopping in a severe mechanical problem, you're right. That could cause some real damage in terms of your brand.
Yeah.
According to the lawsuit, it says that GM violated laws of 26 U.S. states by knowingly selling these several 100,000 cars, trucks, and SUVs with the faulty transmissions. The vehicles were equipped specifically with the 8L45 and the 8L90 8-speed automatic transmissions, and like Reed mentioned, sold from 2015 through 2019, and just doesn't look good, Anna.
Right.
Yeah. In the modern day, doesn't look good. The optics are bad. Optics are bad. John, who's watching us live, it is good to hear from you, John. Sorry, I'm just taking a moment to read it before I say it in case I think producer Alex is giving me the nope. John says, mine was so unstable, I turned it over when I was 19.
Ooh.
All right. Well,
Get in on that class action suit.
Yeah.
Well, give us an update on that one.
Yeah.
Producer Alex does not agree with what Doug said, and I better say that. There you go, Alex. There you go.
Should we just step aside and let Alex and David just kind of take over here?
Some threads.
All right. We're going to have it'll be a thread through this episode. It'll be fun to follow along and see what other, sort of trips and errors we have along the way. It'll be good.
Buckle up.
Well, our next most popular story was a surprising one. Mini fridge maker announces $21.4 million expansion in Michigan. Mini fridge manufacturer Northland Corporation will invest some $21.4 million to expand operations in Greenville, Michigan. The investment will create up to 200 new jobs and retain 116 jobs. Last Tuesday, Governor Gretchen Whitmer announced Michigan Strategic Fund approval for the project, which is going to receive $1.28 million in Michigan Business Development Program grants. In a statement, Governor Whitmer said, quote, by retaining a long-standing manufacturer in Greenville, we can protect an economic engine supporting long-term growth. Northland was founded in Greenville in 1892. The company says it is the longest standing refrigeration company in North America and the 5th largest employer in Greenville. Anna, surprising interest for a rather small operation in Michigan.
For sure. And I think that I thought that too. And then I looked at the story more closely. And I think that's why I like the story, is because there's just sort of this wholesome win for this manufacturer. So you talk about some of the incentives that were involved here. The Michigan Strategic Fund is at the core of this. And that was the $1.25 million, I think, that they were putting towards the project. So I looked into that a little bit. That agency is said to have broad authority to promote economic development and create jobs. And it seems like the state has been pretty active in actually leveraging this agency in areas from not just business development, but also like improving site readiness, adding affordable housing, things along those lines, just whatever they can do to boost companies or the economy in these local regions in Michigan. And, I think an agency like this is super critical for a state like Michigan, where many communities were built around the automotive industry and, subsequent manufacturing projects. And now you see those economic interests kind of fighting with some of these other states that are trying to pull in those plants and get them to relocate or start there because of their right to work, cost efficiencies, whatever they have to offer. And that's been somewhat successful, in some cases. So I think it's good to see that Michigan is really working hard to court some of these businesses, and also not just picking winners based on like what is in the news.
Yeah.
Like a knee-jerk reaction to like whoever big name is like threatening to leave or whatever. I mean,
no, these aren't just like publicity stunts.
Right. Like there's not some pressure campaign that's happening, generating headlines. You don't have to do that to get some love from this program is what it sounds like. And I think Northland is a good example of a manufacturer that's longstanding and really embedded, but has also changed with the times and maybe is worthy of this kind of investment. I was looking at, you mentioned that they were founded in 1892.
Yeah.
Which is like crazy because like people didn't even really have refrigerators then.
Right. I'm pretty sure the first mini fridge was a hole in the ground.
Just like a chest of ice.
Yeah. It was just a smaller hole in the ground.
I think so. Yeah. Well, so they started as a maker of portable cooling equipment. That's what their website says. But they're credited with along the way developing and enhancing the first all-metal refrigerators. They also introduced the first 72-inch refrigerator freezer combo, which is like a very commonplace appliance now, but wasn't then to be that big, And then since then, they've kind of settled into this niche of under-the-counter ice makers and refrigerators and wine fridges for the home bar, stuff like that. I don't know. I thought it was interesting because it's like we always talk about supporting American businesses with our pocketbooks. If you look at the appliance market, only 7 out of the 8 biggest companies globally, are 7 out of the 8 are not on American soil. It's just Whirlpool, that it's U.S. based. So if you want to keep a company on your radar to try to keep your dollars, right in Michigan, that's kind of cool to see this company take some money from the state to continue to operate and develop those jobs.
I took the same angle on this one in terms of looking at the Michigan Strategic Fund. So by my count, the Michigan Strategic Fund has approved some 32 projects as a part of the Michigan Business Development Program just in 2024. I thought that was really incredible. We're talking about millions of dollars in private investment that have come to the state with modest government assistance and thousands of jobs that have been created. And I know that a lot of times, like you mentioned, you think of the big projects, right? Many of these are smaller projects. For every Toyota project, like the $48 million one that's in Saline, Michigan and approved in March, there are ones like Certus Medical's $202,000 project in East Lansing that's going to create 25 jobs. Creative Composites has a $1 million machine shop project in Rapid River that's going to create 17 jobs. And I find that very encouraging because these aren't the huge swings like you were talking about there, and they're almost all performance-based grants. Jeff, another thing is that it looks like when we're talking specifically about Northland Corporation, these are going to be primarily entry-level jobs that are going to, quote, fill a gap in employment opportunities for residents at early stages of their career. I like how they worded that. No. These are great opportunities, but for people at early stages of their career. We need them raw and willing to work for anything.
Wow. It's not really how I took that, I guess.
Oh, sorry. No, I mean, it's a great opportunity to start a career. Manufacturing.
Entry-level jobs. What's wrong with that?
Nothing's wrong with that. Nothing's wrong with that.
Feels like you're taking a stab at that.
I did. I feel
like you tried to lift the fund up with one hand and then kind of smack it down with the other.
Maybe I'm playing both sides here. I don't
think
know.
you are.
We got to add some drama to it, and I'm just like, maybe it's
that's
great.
what you do.
Maybe it's not.
That is
you've
what
already
you do.
been adding
that is
drama
what you do.
to the podcast. I think you've already done that with Alex. So.
It's coming, Alex.
So what I thought about this story, I like what Anna said in terms of it being a very practical application. I think that is something that is overlooked. It's not talk about mini fridges unless you were moving 2 kids to college like I did in the last week.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you have a new appreciation for what the mini fridge brings to the table, but it's a very practical type of application for this money. And it got me kind of curious just in terms of the composition of the Michigan Strategic Fund and how it falls under the Business Development Program. And kind of echoing what you were just stating, there is a statement right in there. It says the support for a project will will be in the form of a grant, direct loan, or other economic assistance and will not exceed $10 million.
Yeah.
So basically putting that type of cap on it not only limits the state's sort of exposure, it also puts the expectations in the right framework in terms of we're here to help. This isn't a free payday. This isn't someone just going to throw a bunch of money at something. There's got to be something in the works. There's got to be a solid plan in place. And then the other thing is all awards will be performance-based. So everything should be incentivized correctly. Keeps you away from some of the Foxconn type mistakes that have taken place around here and other places as well. Yeah. But also it's a level of security in terms of the types of projects you're backing. It isn't a big swing. It doesn't need to be.
Yeah.
In our lifetime, Jeff, are we going to be able to cover a story like this and not just in the back of our minds here, Foxconn, you know?
Well, I think it's been a cautionary tale.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of states have learned. And it's not just Foxconn. I mean, there's the Rivian facility down in Atlanta that's been really contentious and not going to happen now. And how much was done there to get ready for it? Or it's been postponed, not canceled. But and there's a number of those. There's a number of them around the country.
I think great points. I mean, you talk about the concerns these states face when they bet the farm on a single industry or a single company. And Michigan, it's a good way to kind of spread out the risk outside of automotive to make sure that some of these smaller manufacturers who are really the bread and butter of U.S. manufacturing, we know that to be true, are able to maintain their businesses as well. Yeah,
when you look at those 32 companies just in 2024, everything. Like industrial, but everything. Mm-hmm. Jeff, when moving, I mean, because the Northland fridge is a nice fridge. So was it a Northland fridge going in? Or the way I described it was, okay, this is the fridge that you buy for the home when you send your mini fridge with the kids to college.
No, it was not Northland.
Okay.
So my one daughter did not take one up. Hers is still at home. The other one did. It was not Northland, though.
Yeah.
Northland brand.
And, they have a lot of staying power. I held on to that college mini fridge for a long time. It's like a rite of passage. Like you keep it, in whatever your apartment is or whatever for a while after you graduate. And then it becomes the fridge in the garage. And then you finally upgrade it. Yeah, producer Eric still has his college fridge. Just a testament to manufacturing. Yeah. See? All right. It's good. Well made. I like it. All right. Our next most popular story this week. Volkswagen aims to cancel no-layoffs pledge, won't rule out closing plants. In 1994, Volkswagen made a pledge to not lay off any employees through 2029. Well, it looks like they just might have to go back on that promise, and the company also says it's not going to rule out closing some plants in Germany. In a statement, Oliver Blume, Volkswagen Group CEO, this week said the European automotive industry is in a very demanding and serious situation. As new competitors have entered the market, namely low-cost Chinese EVs, Blume says he needs to, quote, act decisively as Germany loses its position as a manufacturing powerhouse. While the company has had success reducing costs, headwinds have intensified. The company wants to cut $10 billion in costs by 2026. Now, that's not going to happen. The closures and layoffs would come from the company's core Volkswagen brand, which saw operating earnings drop $1.1 billion from the previous year. VW tried to pare costs through early retirements and buyouts, but those measures were not enough. VW hasn't closed a plant since 1988 when it shuttered a factory in Westmoreland, Pennsylvania. Anna, it looks like things just might get rough for VW for a while.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know. I will grant that this is a big deal. However, I think we should look at the overall scope of Volkswagen Group as a company. I mean, this is a company with massive scale. They have 114 production facilities in Europe alone. They have 684,000 employees worldwide. So, if they close a facility or two, I know that
they still have 111.
They have a lot. Yeah. That said, it is kind of an out of character move from VW CEO, which to me suggests that it is likely necessary. So Reuters characterized the comments as being the first major clash between Oliver Blume, the chief executive, who analysts have described as more of a consensus builder than his often combative predecessor, Herbert Diess, and the unions that command substantial influence at VW, especially in Germany. But the report went on to say that VW considers one large vehicle plant and one component factory in Germany to be obsolete. So, when you're Volkswagen and you've lost almost a third of your value in the past 5 years, which makes them the worst performer among major European automakers, and you face the embedded costs of the EV transition, and now you have BYD and other Chinese rivals like breathing down your neck, what is ideal may not be relevant at this point. That might not matter. Like, it's a fight for survival potentially. So I think nobody wants to do nothing, and then a year or two down the line, VW is insolvent or worse. I just, even Germany's economy ministry said VW management must act responsibly within a challenging market environment. I think people kind of get it, although they did decline to comment specifically on the planned cuts, probably by design. I will say that making a pledge in 1994 to not cut any jobs until 2029 seems very arbitrary and weirdly short-sighted to me. I don't how would you have any concept of what is going to happen with the market or your business over that massive time period? It just seemed like inadvisable statement to make, and the fact that they're saying they're going back on it, that's not a statement that anyone should be making.
But also that they made it this long and were able to commit to that pledge and maintain it is incredible. And so I think when you make a pledge like that and you actually stick to it, for granted, you don't make it, you're 5 years short, most likely, but you've made it 28, nearly 30 years, no, more than 30 years. That's incredible. And making that commitment to your workers, to the cities and towns and villages that you operate in, I don't know. I think that's an incredible achievement.
Yeah. I mean, they got really far into it. Again, they should never have said it.
Well, I also think that this might not be a big enough problem for the government to step into. That's kind of how I interpreted that statement, was that the combination of them thinking, all right, these might be obsolete plants. When we talked about the cruise ship maker that needed to be bailed out last week, the first thing I thought was oh man, VW, that's something that is going to need a hand. In this one, it sounded more like, we could make some cuts. We could probably make some intelligent decisions that help us out moving forward. Jeff, what was your take on what's going on in terms of Volkswagen's shakeup? And, one thing that also stood out is that they have luxury brands like Audi and Porsche with higher profit margins than these mass market vehicles, and they're doing pretty well.
Well, that's what's kind of the misnomer here. It's not that VW, from a sales perspective, is struggling. They're down a little. They're mainly flat, but they're not gaining market share, especially not in the two biggest markets that they need to worry about, which is Asia Pacific and the U.S. They're not competitive there. They have 60% of the European market share, but the European market is much, much smaller than either of those other two. So that's where their problem is. When you combine that with the fact that they made a $25 billion with a B issue with the whole Dieselgate scandal, and then you pledge another $130 billion with a B dollars towards electrification and digitization efforts, that's a lot of money going out the door. Even if you are the number 2 automaker in the world, that's still a lot that you're not able to reinvest in your company to be more competitive and maybe develop alternatives to some of those lower priced Chinese EVs that are running rampant in Europe right now, or to expand into other markets where you could be more competitive. So I think that's the biggest thing. And when you mention the brands like Audi and Porsche, and then you combine that with VW, there's a missing portion right there. What is your identity? Are you mid and high? Are you low and high? Do you need something in the middle? What are you going to do? You also throw in their $5 billion investment in Rivian, and it just kind of makes me wonder, where does VW want to go? And do they really know what their future holds? All those investments they made in EVs, again, they saw a pretty significant drop this year in the number of EV purchases, as all automakers did.
Yeah.
But if they were counting more heavily on those particular models to help buoy some of their sales, and they didn't, again, you're flat. Ton of money has gone out the door in the last 5 years. There's not enough to reinvest in what you need to do to be competitive. I think that's what they're experiencing right now. So as a result, they have to do something that's a huge paradigm shift for their entire organization, which is to cut jobs, and not just cut jobs in Germany.
Yeah.
I mean, remember the roots of Volkswagen and where it came from. This is the people's car, the people's company. So for them to have to cut stuff in Germany is a huge, huge deal.
Yeah. Well, John mentions that they do have to pay for Audi going into Formula One somehow, but I don't think that's that expensive. I'm pretty sure that's a negligible cost. And Doug actually agrees, saying, hey, they're only 5 years short. Agree with you, Doug. Good point. Solid.
Don't give them a
pass.
pass.
Well, if you remember a couple of months ago, we were talking about how the VW plant unionized in Tennessee, and we talk about how it's a pretty union-friendly environment in Germany. I was interested to see what IG Metal Industrial Union is going to say about it. Their quote, not only is it short-sighted but dangerous as it risks destroying the heart of Volkswagen. Thought maybe that was a little strong, but
I don't think it is.
Unions come on strong. That's kind of what that's what their role is. That's not it's not a takedown. It just
I think if you again look at that from a cultural perspective, though, and the perceptions, and again with all of the Chinese EVs moving in, taking market share, and then you do hear something more negative about that brand and how that resonates with the consumer. We already heard about all of these sort of hesitant buying factors that are coming involved with EVs to begin with. Then I don't know. I think it could definitely be building up, and I think it would just affect the psyche of that company and a lot of their core consumers pretty heavily to see something like this happen.
Well, it seems like it's been the last few months also the time of course correction when it comes to EVs. I think it was just this week we saw Volvo scale back their expectations in terms of an EV fleet. Do you think, is it possible that the EU in particular starts putting down some more like heavy-handed tariffs or regulations on these Chinese imports like we've seen in the US, just to try and like slow the flow of them into the market?
It's not been something that they've done historically for automotive. They've done it in other areas, so it's not unprecedented. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see. I mean, the influence that the automotive market has here in the US, because it's such a big part of our GDP and everything that's so involved in all of our business, I don't think it's that heavy in the European market. But again, if we start seeing staples like Volkswagen start to suffer as a result, yeah, maybe then you do.
Anna, do you see it causing significant morale issues? Top employee representative Daniela Cavallo said, quote, management has failed and now employees are paying the price. Is this something that could have a lasting impact, throughout their system?
That's just so hard to predict. I mean, yeah, of course it's not great for morale, but look at how often this happens here in the US, where a automaker will determine that a facility is redundant and they, to give people some buyouts and they take some early retirements and they move some people around, and then the dust kind of settles and you got some people that are still mad about it, but a lot of people just forget, so I don't know.
Yeah,
we'll see.
I don't want to say the cost of doing business, but it's just.
If these facilities are truly obsolete, I think they can make a case for it. Whether people are happy about that or not, of course, is the other thing, but.
Well, our next most popular story, lacks FAA oversight, blamed for deadly military helicopter crash. On June 22nd, 2022, Marpat Aviation, a flight school in West Virginia, was holding its annual Huey reunion. Members of the public could fly a Bell helicopter UH-1B or Huey with a safety pilot. Everything was going well when the aircraft suddenly lost engine power and hit power lines during an attempt to force land. The NTSB blamed the loss of power on the failure of an engine component, but said Marpat likely would have spotted the fatigue cracks and other damage if it had simply performed more comprehensive inspections. The NTSB is blaming the lack of proper inspections on the FAA, which provided, quote, basically no oversight. The FAA failed to provide guidance for inspectors who perform routine surveillance of operators with experimental airworthiness certificates. Marpat was awarded a special airworthiness certificate for Huey in the, quote, experimental exhibition category in December 2014. The NTSB said the inspection and maintenance requirements in place at the time were insufficient. When they were revised in 2015, MARPAT was exempt from implementing them since the requirements were not in effect when the helicopter's most recent airworthiness certificate was issued. The NTSB said this should serve as a notice to other aircraft in the experimental exhibition category to be maintained on to current standards. Anna, how have we arrived to this point where you cannot, or how have we not come to this point where you can't be like grandfathered into like legacy safety standards? These things are updated for a reason. And it's crazy to me that when some sort of safety regulation in particular is updated, there are people that can still be grandfathered into the old way of doing things.
Yeah. I mean, this was tough to swallow for a couple of reasons. One, I think when you consider that this copter was utilized by the public, therefore, I think there is some baseline assumption here that there is a significant level of oversight when it comes to the components and the maintenance practices. And yes, I agree. I think that there are a few things here that need to be revisited. This idea that the FAA revised the inspection requirements in 2015, but that MARPAT was exempt from implementing those, that's inexcusable to me. If it's a safety requirement, there should be no grandfathering in. I think that should be, I mean, that seems basic, right?
Yeah.
For one thing, it's clearly obviously needed, but two, I think like when you do that, you also kind of suggest that it's like it's a nice to have, well, you're probably fine because you know what I mean? Because you haven't crashed yet. To me, it sends like a terrible message that, it kind of gives this hue that maybe they're ancillary or something or going above and beyond. But when you look at the results of this incident, clearly that was not true. And so, yes, the FAA, takes a lot of blame here. MARPAT takes some blame here also. It sounds like they had maybe stricter practices in place that they decided at some point along the line that they didn't need to be doing regularly. And then, I think lastly, when you look at the NTSB and the role here that they play, we covered last year about how the NTSB, they're known for taking a really long time with their reporting. They do that for a reason because they want to make sure that they're very thorough. But they added a greater depth of staff last year because one of the things they wanted to do was accelerate these investigations. I think it's just so important to invest in these agencies if we want to see improvements here. And 2 years to produce this message is a long time, and there are reasons, but it's a long time. So I think remember that when you start to bemoan the bloated budget of the regulatory space or whatever, it's just adding depth to this kind of gets this, because, if in the end the NTSB is saying this should be a message to the industry, if we had this message earlier, that's better, right?
And it might not have happened. Also, if you want to feel like you're getting your money's worth, you got to stress those NTSB safety reports. You
got to read them.
There's a lot going on in there.
Yeah,
and
they're dense.
There's a narrative. You know what? There's a little. They take a little time to paint the picture for you. Just a little bit more clarity on the situation. So when MARPAT's Huey was operating under a more restricted airworthiness certificate, the NTSB said the company was more rigorous in its inspections and maintenance, like you mentioned, Anna. As a result, even though it was not required to continue using these standards for inspections, its decision to discontinue its previous inspection standards was partially blamed for this crash. Jeff, I'm waiting for you to blame the company, because I feel like this is wholly on the company. And the fact that it was a flight school just made it even worse for me. You are trying to set the standard for, be it amateur pilots or whoever wants to fly a helicopter. But it was shocking to me that a place of education wouldn't hold itself to a higher standard.
Yeah, I don't know if MARPAT Aviation is still in business, but their website is still up.
Okay.
And right when you go to the homepage, the first three things is maintenance is our business, flying is our pleasure, teaching is our job. I'm sorry, but when you're starting to put untrained individuals or passengers into a 60-year-old helicopter and this happens, that's on you.
With cracks in the engine, visible cracks.
That is 100% on you. I mean, I can think of very simple, examples of, it's one thing for me to drive my car down to Chicago or up north, but if I know there's going to be other individuals in that vehicle, I take it to the repair shop first. Make sure everything is working right, get the oil changed, tires rotated, whatever the case is. Same dynamic here. If you want to take that risk with you in these older 60-year-old helicopters, former military usage, that's on you. But when you start putting other people in there, how can you stop going to that next level of inspection and maintenance just because you don't have to?
Yeah.
And and then I think you read the same thing that I picked up on here, but in the NTSB report, they even said Marpat Aviation's decision not to use more rigorous inspection standards when the helicopter was operated under an experimental category certificate was also a factor that led to the accident. Mm-hmm. So NTSB definitely called them out and showed it right back at Marpat, which they should have. And there is that personal level of accountability without a doubt. So I hope that doesn't get lost in any of this. The other thing that's really important, and you are much more familiar with the NTSB reports than I am, but in looking at this one of the big things was the final portion of the report, which talked about recommendations. And all of their recommendations, which gave me some satisfaction and sort of relief in this whole story, was basically them saying, all of those dumb regs that were in there before that allowed this to get missed and grandfathered, you need to change all that.
Yeah.
That needs to go right back to the way it was so that these types of inspections, these types of standards are not neglected and this type of thing allowed to happen, essentially. You need to hold people's feet to the fire. You shouldn't have to, but you do. And hopefully there's some sort of expediency clause or fast-tracking route that this stuff can go through because we see a lot of these types of events. The EAA fly-in in Oshkosh, right close to us that we see every year. And how many times we hear of horrible accidents of individuals coming in there.
Every year.
Bad ones too.
Yeah.
And again, we're looking at older aircraft, things that maybe do get grandfathered in, are not inspected as closely, but could potentially be avoided if the FAA or the NTSB, whoever is the regulatory body, takes greater measures to make sure everybody's held accountable accordingly.
Of the parts of the NTSB report to read, the recommendations are the one thing you should check out. If it has anything to do with the industry you're involved in, I think it's because they really, again, spell out cause and effect and how you prevent it going forward. And I mean, we like to highlight a lot of the more interesting or surprising accidents that the NTSB is investigating. I mean, every once in a while, there are some no-brainers. Like just this week, the NTSB put out a report about the sinking of the towing vessel Uncle Blue. I don't know if you guys had a chance to check this out at all on the NTSB website. And we were looking at it because we didn't know if it could be a potential story. But basically, an NTSB investigator went there, and there was like, it was a 60-year-old vessel. And when they looked at it, it was full of holes. So it was like the quickest investigation ever. They're just like, we found the cause. Your old boat sank because it had holes in it. And so like every time there's, kind of a interesting story that they need to unravel and get to the bottom of the investigation, sometimes they just walk up and they're like, that's it. All right, we'll see you. I got to get back on the plane. All right. Our most popular story this week, Boar's head plant linked to deadly outbreak broke food safety rules dozens of times. Are you listening to this at lunch? Because if you are, feel free to pause it or pause your lunch. A new report from the AP has found some startling violations at the Boar's Head plant, deli meat plant, tied to a deadly food poisoning outbreak. Mold, insects, liquid dripping from ceilings, and meat and fat residue found on walls, floors, and equipment all were found in the Virginia plant. Inspectors found 69 examples of non-compliance, including several in recent weeks. The factory is going to remain closed, quote, until the establishment is able to demonstrate it can produce safe product. The Boar's Head plant has been shut down since late July. The plant has been linked to 9 deaths and 50 hospitalizations, all sickened with listeria after eating deli meats. The company's recall now includes 7 million pounds of products. Now let's get gross. From August 1st, 2023 to August 2nd, 2024, inspectors found, quote, heavy discolored meat buildup, meat overspray on walls and large pieces of meat on the floor, flies going in and out of pickle vats, black patches of mold on the ceiling and blood puddled in the floor, and a rancid smell in the cooler. Let's all just breathe through that one for a second. Plant staff were notified of the violations repeatedly. Boar's Head officials said that when problems were found, quote, corrective actions were taken. Jeff, this is gross. Gross negligence, gross incompetence. Just gross.
Yeah. And people died as a result too. Mm-hmm. So I think, when I looked at IEN.com and looking at this story, I think the comments there pretty much nailed it. Mm-hmm. Talking about holding people accountable, potential criminal charges, also the reputational charges or the reputational impact that this is going to have on people. One individual said this was what his parents always bought and he will never go near it again.
Agreed.
And to me, a lot of these parallels, because we talk about these safety stories a lot, especially food safety a lot. And yes, I don't want to excuse in any way, shape, or form the leadership at this facility or really the company. For something to get this horrifically bad, there's just a blind eye being turned to way too many things at all levels. But it felt like there's a real parallel to cybersecurity and a lot of things we talk about there, because you can put as much technology in place, you can put as many procedures in place, you can find them as much as you want to. At the end of the day, the biggest vulnerability for any information technology organization like manufacturing are the employees, are the workers. Yeah. There has to be buy-in at that level to do something as basic, in this case, as keeping your facility clean. Just like you can't use, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 as your password, you have to take accountability.
I should change that?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Don't use password as your password.
Okay.
Things of that nature. And again, that goes back to helping employees understand the impact that them doing simple things from a cybersecurity perspective impact the whole organization. Same dynamic here. Because what you're seeing is these individuals not caring or just turning a blind eye to I'm not going to reiterate all the gross stuff you talked about there, but please. I mean, you're walking past that every day.
Yeah.
You see this. And for collectively this size of a facility to everybody just go, meh, don't care. That's on the employees and that's on the culture and the organization for not reinforcing the significance. At this point, not only is that company in trouble, people died.
Right.
And the reputational fallout that is now attached to Boar's Head, because these things were so over the top and so incredibly hard to believe even that this would take place. I mean, this sounds like something 100 years ago, not now. This doesn't seem like a modern food processing facility. So when all those things come to a head like this, again, the employees play a role, not dismissing leadership here, but there has to be buy-in at all levels or everything falls apart.
Well, and we're not talking about like a brown spot on the ceiling here. We're talking about like large, noticeable, rancid spots throughout the facility that, I mean, it's not you're turning a blind eye, you're turning several blind eyes. And this is a premium meat product.
Well, and you should be even more sensitive to it because it is your work environment. You'll be seeing it. It shouldn't become just like you don't become immune to these things. You should become more sensitive to it.
Well, and if not, if you don't even want to worry about consumer safety, that's fine. But worry about your own safety. If you're working alongside these types of conditions, you need to say something.
Right.
And Doug says that Boar's Head has already strong-armed grocery store delis with overpriced deli meats. Now I really have no reason not to buy their product. Agreed, Doug. And that was, I mean, to the reputational damage. The fallout of this is, does Boar's Head survive this?
I don't know.
Those are vivid descriptions of the plant that it is going to be difficult just for me personally to reconcile whenever I'm at that deli counter. And I don't know that I can.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen companies survive lots of crazy fallout. Who knows? Maybe they just rebrand. But it's it's disgusting. It was disgusting to read. And I think one of the biggest problems with listeria that I think is important to remind everybody is that listeria can persist in facilities for a very long time. It's very resistant to elimination because it forms a biofilm on top that protects it basically from cleaning products. So it's very hard to eradicate. It can live on like a scratched surface or a gouged surface, like a crack in the floor, or a surface used for cutting. You're in a meat cutting plant. It just can live in there for a long time. So those pathogens will recur again and again. It's not just as simple as like bleaching it and moving on. And I think that's what was alarming when you looked at the report of this Virginia state inspection and some of the comments that I think a food safety analyst made about this, saying there were no reports of listeria being discovered, which was concerning based on the fact that condensation and other warning signs suggested that there could be listeria in the plant. So maybe those tests were not performed. Right. That's what it sounds like. And I think when you look at some of the regulatory drama that's happened in the meat industry over the last few years, it's scary to consider that we have gone in the wrong direction, in my opinion, in terms of what we expect from a regulatory standpoint in the meat industry. In 2019, the Agriculture Department implemented a rule that reduced the number of inspectors required at pork plants. Yeah. Basically said they could self-police in many cases, have their employees perform inspections. That was the same time that it was pretty highly publicized at the same time that that the Ag Department had approved increasing line speeds on those production lines. So the increase in line speeds was later thrown out by the courts because of concerns over safety for workers, but also for consumers. So the Food Safety Inspection Service made it into a voluntary program where they could trial the line speed increase and measure the impact. And that's been going on since then. So it's happening. Tyson had to say yes. Yeah. Tyson is one of the companies in the trial, by the way. So in 2022, a federal judge also upheld the USDA's new swine inspection system, which allows for additional inspection duties to be done by processing facility employees. They said it would remove about 40% of government safety inspectors from slaughter plants and things like that. And I know this is a slightly different application that we're seeing at Boar's Head. It's not probably at that same stage, more of a finished product, but I don't exactly know what start to finish they were doing there. To me, it's you look at rules like these, they suggest to me that we care more about efficiency and profits than we do about food supply safety, worker safety. It's hard to come at this now from a perspective of this should be a better process. It was a better process and then it was changed. So yeah, it's frustrating to me to see that happen. And it does so kind of quietly. And then people don't know that it's happening. And then we find out late that in the game that, a rule from 4 or 5 years ago, maybe was, a reason that something got missed or an inspection wasn't performed. Again, potentially that rule did not apply in this case, but I think we have to look at the greater context here and say, are we going in the right direction?
Self-policing is such a great concept. And I do like the idea that everyone's above board and doing so in an honorable fashion, right? I love the idea of self-policing working because you're right. If it does work, then yeah, it should be able to cut out a bunch of inefficiencies and really help both the end consumer and the company. But how many times has the public been burned on companies that were self-policing?
Well, and that's the thing is with that process, then the only way to find out typically is when, at the end.
Yeah.
Well, I think the problem there with the self-policing, if I had to guess, a lot of that comes from the fact, and we talked about this, it was exposed during the pandemic, the head count, the number of inspectors out there is lacking big time. There's just not enough to get around. And in a lot of instances, if you're making soup for Campbell's, for example, so Campbell's doesn't make all of their own soup. They have people that they outsource that to, a lot of contract manufacturers, but Campbell's in this instance would have somebody there who is auditing the quality of that product, making sure everything is good. And in a lot of instances, those internal audits are more stringent than anything the FDA would put down. Okay, so in some cases, the self-policing can work. The problem is when you take the blanket approach that we're talking about here and you're looking at a company with Boar's Head who prior to this had such a strong reputation and basically who is going to audit them other than maybe some of the individuals they sell to. Well, Walmart's not worried about that. Kroger's isn't worried about that because it's Boar's Head, right? Why should they need to?
Yeah, it's a premium product.
In those instances, to Anna's point, that's where it falls down. And when we try to take these blanket approaches to everything in the name of efficiency, in the name of cost cutting, that's when mistakes like this are allowed to sort of happen. And that's extremely frustrating to see, disappointing to see.
Were either of you surprised to see that there was no enforcement actions against Boar's Head from January and March of this year?
It was disappointing to see that because I think, to to the points being made in the article about like why didn't anyone catch that this was very easily going to be a listeria problem? You know, if they had caught that, then that's something that you get on top of immediately because it's so dangerous. I mean, that's like a shutdown situation.
Yeah, 100%.
And the fact that nobody performed those tests is what it sounds like.
Yeah.
Is extremely frustrating, and then therefore maybe not surprising that they didn't come back right away because they did not seem to try that hard.
Well, a Boar's head official told CBS that the company regrets the impact of the recall and prioritizes food safety. And you can't put that statement in this story and think any part of that is true.
Right.
That they prioritize food safety.
Just got to say, hey, we screwed up and we're gonna.
Yeah.
We haven't. We need to.
If they reopen the plant, yeah. The company also said that all issues raised by inspectors were addressed immediately. Bill Marler, who's a Seattle lawyer who has sued companies over food poisoning outbreaks, said the conditions described in the inspections reports were the worst that he's seen in 30 years.
Ugh.
And that is wild. Again, but it's also a lawyer. All right. Well, before we move on to, in case you missed it, we have another word from our sponsor, MSI Data. This week's episode is brought to you by MSI Data. Many field service organizations understand the technology they use in their day-to-day operations, but don't take the necessary steps to tap into its full potential. In your guide to field service maturity, you'll discover what field service maturity is, why it matters, and how to get started. Download your guide to field service maturity now. There is the link to it in the body copy, and you can catch it in the comments section. All right, in case you missed it, stories maybe not as popular on our sites, manufacturing.net and Industrial Equipment News, but still stand to make a big impact on the industry going forward. Anna, what's your in case you missed it this week?
I selected a story titled Electric RV Maker Pebble Opens 60,000 Square Foot Manufacturing Facility in the U.S. The story is about a California startup that is behind the all-electric RV trailer called the Pebble Flow. They announced that they are opening a new 60,000 square foot facility in Fremont. It will be used for manufacturing. The Pebble Flow has been like very interesting for me to follow. So that's just from a personal standpoint. I just think it looks like a very awesome product. So basically, it's an all-electric RV. It's a towable RV. It's got a cool history. It was developed using the minds from Apple, Tesla, Zoox, Rivian, SpaceX. A bunch of people came on board to try to build this thing. It's like a travel trailer that they say has so many automation capabilities and features that they say it's as easy as using an iPhone. So it's got this like magic hitch, tow assist, all this stuff. And then you can basically ditch like propane and you can take this thing off the grid for up to 7 days. And just, it's got integrated solar. And so I don't know, it's just like a very cool product that I think the industry, the RV industry, is sort of lacking. If there's, I know there are people out there that like, I think the RV lifestyle would be fun for them if it wasn't so environmentally intensive. But this thing like looks very cool. And it's like about as expensive as a big towable RV is anyway. So now they just have to close the loop and create enough EV autos that can tow it. It's like 6,000 pounds fully loaded. But anyway, I thought it was interesting because, the new facility is going to add up to 100 jobs. They're high-tech roles. They say they're in clean energy because obviously you got everything here. You got the vehicle itself, but you've got the solar integration, the electrical side of it. So engineering, production, operations, quality, all within this facility. And I know sometimes a big swing like this doesn't ever get off the ground. To see them open up a manufacturing facility and they've got this great pedigree of people on board. I'm just really hopeful that it works. I don't know. I think it's a cool product. So.
No, I think so too. And I'm surprised as to how far they've made it so far. But it is heavy. I didn't realize it was over 6,000 pounds.
Yeah, but trailers are heavy.
No,
it's not.
I understand.
It's not like heavier than other stuff. Like it's a comp.
Well, I really like the design of it because it's one of those things. similar to when we first started seeing Rivians on the road, where it would stop you and force you to look at it and just go, what is that? And it certainly has that kind of curb appeal. Doug, who's watching us live, he says, Pebble is cool. Wish I could afford one.
Same, Doug.
We agree. Jeff, I mean, it's probably pretty costly, right?
Yeah, I did Google it quick.
Yeah.
It is.
In
it
the
is
low
expensive.
6 figures, but
Yeah, it's up there, but it depends on where your priorities are. It'll be interesting to see how this scales. I mean, that's a good size manufacturing plant that they're putting in place there. So how many are they looking to make each year? How many are they willing to sell? It looks like they're doing pre-orders already for 2025. So, it's really interesting to see where this could also go, because obviously an RV is what they're designing it for recreational purposes. But when you think about trauma centers, when you think about other different medical applications, military applications, all of that, where this could go with this type of technology, and if it's that easy to use, that's, I think, the most impressive part to me, especially when you talk about hooking up to a trailer. Got some stories there I could definitely share with.
Yeah.
I know what I'm doing, guys. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
You're not wrong, though. That's like a big barrier for a lot of people. It's just like
100%.
not wanting to do that part of it.
Or just being intimidated by the process, when if you pay attention, it's not too complicated until the boat trailer hitch is hitting the back of the truck because you didn't hitch it up
So
right.
this thing, like, it's completely automated. It will like drive to you and lock into the hitch. It's like so cool. It's
That's what's
magic
really great.
hitch, they call it.
That is incredible, because Jeff, it's not only people that are scared of it that don't want to do it, but I've seen many a confident person, like you mentioned, try to get that boat on the hitch. And you look at all those trucks, and those are not clean bumpers. They are not like, they've been scuffed once or twice. And I mean, when you talk about a low 6 figures, a price tag from $110,000 to $125,000 starting, I mean, sure, I'm not in that situation right now, but I know people in my family that are transitioning into retirement, talking about downsizing. And as you're kind of unloading other assets, a price tag like that is pretty reasonable when you're looking at a new,
If you're looking at buying a second home, like a vacation home versus this, it's a good deal then.
Yep.
I mean, so like I said, depends. For the right person, I think it's a great fit.
Jeff, what do you have for us in case you missed it this week?
I was so happy to see this story.
Okay.
I really was, because this not only reflected some things that I've been hearing from people talking about artificial intelligence, but a lot of what I felt kind of at my core just didn't maybe have all of the facts to back it up. And this was a story, I think this ran across the site. I happened to see it on Industrial Distribution, but it was talking about AI may not steal as many jobs after all. And I thought it was great because it talked about how artificial intelligence, much like a lot of other technologies, automation, Industry 4.0, all of that stuff, isn't about replacing humans. It's about making us more productive, and not about necessarily eliminating jobs, but helping us to do those jobs better. And it gave and there's a number of examples in here. It talks about, these are some call centers and some other different applications. The ones that really stood out to me were a couple of stats where it said that, first of all, 60% of all jobs that existed in 2018 did not exist in 1940. These were jobs that were created because of new technologies. Artificial intelligence, in my opinion, is very similar to that. Another one is it talked about, again, in one of these call centers, the average resolution to a customer call fell in a period of 4 months after integrating some of the AI tools. It fell from 14 minutes to 7 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
Because they were basically able to take the information, apply the AI to the incoming call in identifying the sources of the answers that the caller needed.
Yeah.
And I think that's really intuitive to how we're going to be using AI right now.
Yeah.
I know, in the next lifetime, David, your
Next
robot
lifetime.
overlords will be using it more nefariously. But for right now, it's just an incredible tool for creating, for what we do, for a lot of marketing copy.
Yeah.
And eliminating time in there and streamlining. I know Eric uses it for some editing processes on the video side. So that's just in our little sphere of what we do. When you expand beyond that, again, I think being able to plug in a tool that takes all this data, synthesizes it, and spits out what you need in a quicker fashion, that is going to help us in a lot of places, a lot of ways.
Or this is an AI generated piece of content meant to make us complacent.
Wow.
So our guard will be down even lower.
So it generated
During
the
the transition.
quotes, it did all the formulations. It knew exactly what would set our mind at ease.
It's not passing the sniff test, Jeff.
Well, the only other thing, and I've said this before, with AI, it needs new data.
Yeah.
It cannot generate information. So somebody needs to plug in that data or supply it in order to create these decisions that it makes.
And clean it up. When you talk about resolving customer calls from 14 minutes to 7 minutes, that only makes me slightly less frustrated. Like, it's got to get down, like, keep it a tight 3 to 5, and I'll be all right. But it's already cut in half.
But David, I feel like when you call in with a problem, it takes you 3 to 5 minutes just to explain it and get all your frustrations out.
Well, I have to spend at least 6 minutes talking about how it's my fault, and then apologizing for troubling them and taking up their time, and then trying to finally get to the root of the issue. And what were your thoughts on this? I mean, this is a hot topic, as any new buzzword is, particularly in industry where, wow, this is cool, no technology. Whoa, 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 it's going to take our jobs.
Yeah, we definitely always find a way to panic. But we have been told for, I would say, the good part of 2 decades now that robots were taking our jobs. Mm-hmm. And that hasn't happened yet. In fact, if you look at the roles that automation, that are currently utilizing automation predominantly, they're in areas where people sometimes can barely keep their doors open because they can't find enough humans to work there. So you're plugging in your order at McDonald's on a screen, like, oh, okay, but like at least you're able to be there. And then, manufacturing as well. I know the manufacturing industry for many, many years has had a worker shortage. So, automation has solved a lot of problems there and enabled those businesses to continue to operate. So I see this in much that way, that it will slot in where necessary, but I don't see it becoming like the person who cuts your hair. Right. I don't think that that's going to be AI.
Interesting. I like it. Humanoid robot.
When it comes to AI, like there's somebody I was talking to, because we talk about this a lot on the Security Breach podcast too, talking about AI and what it's going to have. It's just like, take a breath.
Yeah.
Just take a breath.
Yep.
It's there. We'll figure it out.
Relax. Read some sort of dystopian fiction.
Let your guard down.
Let your guard down. Exactly. Mine, in case you missed it this week, is about how these new morphing wheels created by researchers can easily drive upstairs. So these researchers have created a new variable stiffness morphing wheel. Not only can they roll over giant stones and other rough terrain, but they can even climb stairs. These wheels adjust stiffness in real time and could soon find themselves in a wide range of applications, from wheelchairs to mobile robots. These wheels were developed by the Advanced Robotics Research Center at the Korea Institute of Machinery and Materials, and they were inspired by the surface tension of a drop of liquid. So, obviously, I chose the story, checking a lot of biomimicry boxes for me. And I'm always intrigued by both the inspiration and the end product. So they went from a drop of liquid and wound up creating, potentially revolutionary tires. Mm-hmm. The system alters the wheel's stiffness by changing the surface tension to the smart chain blocks without complex machinery or sensors. The wheel operates like a normal circular rigid structure in regular driving mode, and then it switches to a soft, deformable state when it's rolling over obstacles. Previous technologies like non-pneumatic tires, we've seen a lot of those, 3D printed tires, they have been designed to work inside of wheels as flexible structures. The wheels are continuously deformed even when driving on flat surfaces, which makes them less efficient and stable. It makes them louder. Generally, when you're talking about the give and take between tires that can go over multiple terrains and never go flat, people are not happy with the sacrifices they're making there. Not only could this be a game changer for wheelchairs, but it could solve efficiency and stability problems on 2- and 4-legged walking robots that often struggle over obstacles. I thought this was an incredibly cool application. When you see this thing in action and how it works, you can see the real world applicability of this. Right now in tests, when you see the wheelchair going up over obstacles, it's lurching pretty forward. Maybe not everybody could stay in that chair, but just a first generation. And one thing when we talk about humanoid robots, I know that we don't like to talk about it, but we talk about it, is stability issues, right? You get these robots trying to walk around on 2 or 4 limbs, and they're slow, they're unstable, they're shaky. This is something that could completely change that and make them much more applicable in various environments.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff, I don't know if you had a chance to check out some of the video footage of this thing in action, but what'd you think about these morphing wheels?
David, you did it. You found the story that is most the thing that leads to the thing.
Whoa.
I did it. I wanted to
You
set
did
the
it.
table for you.
Attaboy.
Mm-hmm.
Good work.
I'm just like, this one's for Jeff.
You didn't, but I appreciate it anyway. This is incredible. This is really cool. I mean, when you look at where this could lead to, the wheelchair is very cool and what it can do there. But I mean, the first place I went was anything that has a track right now. Any tracked vehicle that could use this instead.
Oh yeah.
Also, when you look in construction, agriculture, all of those things where you're dealing with all of these obstacles potentially in the work environment. Just avoiding that. I mean, the reduced maintenance that it could improve, the amount of time that wouldn't be wasted digging something out because it got stuck, whatever the case might be. I think this is incredible, and I think the applications could just take off. I mean, it's pretty incredible. I have to admit, too, the first thing, did you ever, when you were a kid, did you ever have stompers? Do you remember what those were? They were like these battery-operated 4x4 type cars, and they had these foam tires on it. They did not work this well. Okay, I'm not trying to say that. But they looked similar because they had like these foam tires that would like squish up when it was going over stuff. So it had a similar dynamic. But anyway.
We got to talk to the researchers behind this and be like, did you guys have Korean stompers?
Stompers. Those were awesome. Anyway.
Well,
great story, though.
One thing when we talk about these robot applications for robots, potentially autonomous robots, in rescue situations, right? When you're going into something after a terrible event, and you think about the Spot from Boston Dynamics and other robots that could actually get in there, but how crazy the rubble is that they have to get over. Mm-hmm. When you see how this thing is operating, or even John says like in a lunar rover, that would be a tremendous application.
Yeah.
This is something where you can realistically see it navigating that environment with some success.
Yeah. Yeah, and the other thing I thought of that maybe they mentioned it, but obviously wheelchairs is one, but prosthetics, is there like an application there? Obviously, if it's like the stability part, that could be a major thing there, especially if you're not getting some of that deformity that's occurring with some of the other products that are maybe out there. So I don't know. I mean, anything that could keep you, make you more stable.
No, that would be. That would actually be a really cool application, just in terms of, completely redesigning a prosthetic leg. Producers Eric and Alex have pulled up a stomper vehicle, and no, I definitely didn't have that.
So you see like the star tires there?
Yeah.
Like when you would run over like your Legos, like those would actually like
they deform a little bit?
Yeah, and so it would keep.
And they were made out of foam?
Yeah, it was like the foam. Yeah, and everything else was plastic, and they ran out of single or a AA battery. Yeah, we have lots of fun
it was
with
like
those.
an RC car?
No, you just it had a switch on the bottom. It was not that complicated. it was on and off. It was either going or it wasn't.
This thing's blowing our minds.
Yeah.
I had a bunch of them. They were fun.
I think it's, you give me something to eBay later today. All right. Well, before we get out of here this week, Doug also says that it's working like a reverse slinky. So, I don't know. I'm curious to see how this thing will work. And also the first thing when I saw, and I know that producer Eric, who put together this video, his first reaction too was it looks like a mushroom, like when you're looking at it from the side view. Oh, and it's already on eBay. Could you bookmark that for me and send it over?
Watch the commercial first. It'll blow your mind.
Oh, yeah? Okay. We will charge $150. Maybe not. Maybe that'll be a flea market. Keep my eyes open at a flea market. Maybe one with 3 tires. Well, before we get out of here this week, let's jump into our final thoughts. Anna, what's your final thought this week?
First week of school for us this week, which has been awesome. I have 2 first graders, and they are twins, and they are very different. So they came home yesterday with like a very interesting difference in response. My daughter said that she was disappointed that they didn't do more learning on the first day of school. Yeah.
Wow.
Man.
Who is she sucking up to? Come on.
She loves it. And then my son said that it was very boring, and then he learned a new song about diarrhea. So
well, fantastic.
that's
the real education.
Yeah, first grade, that's when, I don't know. That's when you learn them, I guess. But
Yeah, the potty humor is only going to escalate. I mean, pretty much indefinitely now.
yeah, just casually singing it as he's playing, and just like I'm glad you are learning a little. So
It's about the social education is too, right?
yes, for sure. Yeah, no, they're doing great. So it was fun to see all the kids back in their giant backpacks and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, nothing builds lifelong friendships like singing songs about non-solid bowel movements.
It's a foundation.
It's a foundation. It's a loose one. All right, my final thought. I'm sorry. My final thought this week was that I once again fell victim to a successful marketing campaign that did not meet my expectations.
Oh, no.
Have you guys seen the saucy nugs advertised so beautifully from Wendy's?
Yes.
And it's just, they make them look so good. And I get it. I know it. It's just a chicken nugget that they've soaked in sauce.
Mm-hmm.
But I've wanted to try it because I'm a sucker for spicy garlic sauce. And I'm like, okay, if we can, one thing with, let's say, boneless chicken wings, which are just, fat chicken tenders, the price point's a little out of control. So I thought maybe going to Wendy's, it would bring it down a little bit. It's not. They're expensive. And I finally went there because I'm like, you know what? I just want to try them. Get disappointed or not, I just want to try them. And so that way I can check that box. I went, stand in line. I'm in the drive-thru for at least 10 minutes. 2 people in front of me leave. And I'm just like, okay, I got to be close. I have to be close. But I asked the guy in the speaker, how much longer are we looking at? He just says, going to be quite a few more minutes still. And I'm like, I get frustrated. I finally leave and I'm leaving the parking lot. And I'm like, you know what? No, I'm here. No matter how much longer it's going to take, I'm just going to try them. It'll be fine. I go into the restaurant. They're filling multiple orders of 50 packs of nuggets, which I didn't even know that you could order. So I understood. I used the little AI kiosk because I thought whatever, that would make it go faster. Sit there for a very long time. Finally get my saucy nugs. I get the spicy barbecue and spicy garlic. Get them home, try to taste them. They're terrible. Just bad. Not that I was ever a fan of a Wendy's nugget before, but I'm like, okay, you take a Wendy's nugget, you sauce in some spicy garlic, maybe you got me. But it's $4 or $5 for gross nuggets. And they didn't even put them in the right sauce. Wow. I wanted 2 spicy sauces and they gave me both in sweet barbecue. And I'm just like, come on. And I just when it comes to marketing, in terms of setting expectations, and I'm not asking you to exceed them. Just meet it. Make it somewhat palatable. Gross. Huge disappointment.
You know what's a game changer for me for chicken wings? Because I love chicken wings too, but they're expensive at a restaurant to buy and take home. Mm-hmm. And you can't find the right ones always just to make in the oven.
Right.
But for Christmas, one of my daughters got me an air fryer.
Yeah.
So going to a food service place, one of those places, and just buy a bunch of chicken wings and putting them in there and then sauce them.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Really?
Yeah.
Are they still, they got that crisp on the edge?
Yeah. You just spray a little oil on them when they're in the air fryer.
Okay.
And you're good to go.
I will try, because I do I'm a sucker for you get the huge bag of them or whatever and throw them on the grill. I like it, but it's labor intensive.
Well, and the skin doesn't get crispy. with the air fryer, it gets yeah, it's good stuff.
Okay.
Highly recommend it.
I will try anything other than these dreadful saucy nugs. I can't believe I bought a food product with a Z in it.
How many people said I told you so to this one?
Well,
because I think there'd be 2 of them right here.
I'm only coming clean to you guys. Well, one, my wife, and she was just what did you expect? Yeah, I was talking to Mitzi in the office about how I wanted to try them. He's like, don't look good to me. Don't look good to me at all. And Mitzi's got some hot food takes. So I figured if he's not going to like it, chances are they might be good. Depressing failure. Just depressing failure. And to the point, I'm not going to go back to Wendy's, because it's so gross. Jeff?
This was really bothering you.
It was. Man. And sometimes with these final thoughts, I don't talk about it to anybody because I'm I want it to be raw. I want it to be raw on the podcast. And then I just start opening up and I'm let me tell you another thing. And I apologize for it, guys. But luckily, at least I feel better. Sorry.
So this is sort of a therapeutic thing for you.
It
Yeah, I
was
guess.
quite therapeutic. I've come down from at least an 8 to a 6 already. Thanks.
Well, speaking of things that'll definitely be therapeutic for me, unfortunately, I will not be here next week because I am going fishing.
Oh, man.
So,
Jeff, again?
yes,
Where are you going fishing?
Eagle River.
Oh, man.
Going up there. So
In a
I will
beautiful
miss
spot.
it. And I'm also, one of the reasons I'm going up, not just for the fishing and the relaxation and all the great stuff that comes with that, but I'm looking at the boat I might be buying.
Whoa.
So if anybody's got some tips on why I should or should not buy a fishing boat, I'll ignore all of them, but you can send them in. I'd love to see them.
Well, according to the NTSB, look for holes in the hull.
Well, there should be one. You just got to make sure you put the plug in.
That's fair. That's fair. I think it was, when it becomes multiple, that's when you really run
That's
into
when
issues.
when you have more holes than plugs. That's the problem.
Man, just transitioning into that new lifestyle.
I'm leaning into it, man. I'm going for it. I got all this time now.
Man, no, that's hey, that's cool. And thanks for giving us a heads up.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll miss you next week, but enjoy it and hopefully you get a chance to relax. Before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. If you'd like to help us out a little bit, you could leave the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Anna at IN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. And subscribe to us on YouTube at IN Magazine so you can join John and Doug and Joe and everyone that joins us in the live chat. For Jeff Ranke and Anna Wells, I'm David Manti. This is the Today in Manufacturing podcast, and we will see you next week.